for one thing, thank you so much for taking some time. As a business owner, I understand that time is everything. So thanks for taking a moment to speak with us. We're so excited to have you in our box.
Yeah, me too.
Trailblazer. You guys are trailblazers. You're in a male-dominated field. Like, we're just super stoked. You know, we're all women as well. So we were just excited to get you on the line. And I guess I want to kind of just start off by allowing you to introduce your company and you and your business partner.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can kind of go into a few questions that.
My name is Kaya Ray Nystrom. I am the CEO and co-founder of Quim. Quim is a self-care line for humans with vaginas and humans without vaginas who love vaginas. So not everyone in the population, but a lot of us.
A lot.
And we make products for the love of vaginas. Those are cannabis-infused vaginal topicals. So we have 4 different products. 2 of them are only available in California dispensaries due to their THC content. And then we have 2 products that are made with hemp-derived CBD, broad spectrum. So we keep the full plant profile in there, minus, it has to be below 0.3% THC. And that is, our CBD line is carried with the fabulous folks at Grassed.Roots.
Nice. That's us. That's us.
And will you tell me a little bit of, just so it's conversational, will you tell me a little bit about yourself and why you started this subscription box company, which is providing an awesome service?
Thanks for asking. Sure. Well, we are partners. So there's 3 of us. There's Tierra, Kiera, and then myself, Nina. And it's very interesting how we joined together. It's a little bit of a long story, but I will say for myself, because I can only speak for myself right now, as far as my journey, I have been involved in cannabis as a whole since college. I'm approaching my 40s at this point. So it's been a very long time coming for me, and I've always used it in a holistic and healing way. I'm in it for the medicinal aspect of it, so it was easy for me to transition from, and not a complete transition, just evolve into CBD as well. Once it started to become more popular and legal states made it more abundant and so on and so forth. I really got into that, and I thought it was amazing. I was able to start actually creating my own oils and distributing them to my family members, my grandparents, who were on tons and tons of medications, and just seeing real results, and that is what moves me. And it's not as easy to really get people interested in that in the cannabis world as it is in, I'm sorry, not cannabis, but THC as it is in CBD. So being in CBD is very fulfilling for me, and it's everything. It really is. So that's for myself. When I met Tierra through Mary in Maine, it was either Mary's List or Mary in Maine. They were just looking for someone to help her transition in Georgia when she moved to Atlanta and get familiar with the industry here. I'm back and forth between here and Vegas a lot. That's where my grandparents live, and the other family members or what have you, but I'm mainly here. So I was able to just kind of introduce her to, people here, and she already knew Kiera, and Kiera's in Oregon actually. So we're in Atlanta and she's in Oregon. We all merged together because we were all like-minded, and we thought that there was a gap in the educational aspect of CBD, and also just subscription boxes that aren't providing samples, as opposed to those large sized CBD tinctures. And if you don't like it, then you're just stuck with this huge amount.
It's really expensive, and people are not, I would say it's a nascent enough market. We're still new to CBD. It's part of a plant that has been used medicinally for thousands and thousands of years, but CBD as, you know, one of the cannabinoids that has all of these healing properties. There's such a wide spectrum of what's out there. So much of it isn't tested. And I think that being able to provide a box service where people can try something before committing to it, because these things, especially when they're made, you know, ethically and responsibly, like they are expensive, you know, and it is a medicine, and you need to be able to try before you buy.
Right. Really narrow it down. So we were excited about companies like you who saw the value and understood the need.
Oh
Because
yeah.
it really routes right back to you all, as long as you're doing the right thing. And Quim is definitely doing the right thing. And it's rare. Like, I just started, and I can't remember the title of the book, of course, now, but I just started a book about anatomy, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
she talks all mainly about us and how we are just very uninformed about our lady parts and how everything is normal pretty much, but reinforcing that, you know, and I think that that needs to be widespread, because I am blown away by how many people just don't understand their,
Totally. There
yeah.
weren't anatomical drawings of the clitoris, I think, until it was like 1994, 96. Like, that's crazy.
That's,
We have had our clitoris, like, and you wonder why there's this major gap in, you know, the difference, you know, the average person with a penis experiences a climax 96% of times when they have a sexual encounter. It's like maybe 30 if you have a
yeah,
vagina. And that's
yeah.
just like, and maybe it's because we didn't, you know, up until very recently, we were not educating people about the clitoris.
Mhm. Yes. And I think that your brand helps get that conversation going, even for people who aren't familiar, and for people who are already really familiar. It just really, like, it's like something tangible that can actually assist in their needs. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a beautiful thing, and that actually leads me to my first question, which is, um, how did you and your partner find each other? And develop this wonderful body positive company?
Yeah. Well, sort of two parts. Myself and all of the women in my family are very, very susceptible to vaginal health issues. I got my first UTI, urinary tract infection, when I was like 18. It was like a few weeks after I had had penetrative sex for the first time. I also was a swimmer in high school, so I spent a lot of time in a wet bathing suit, which now I know is like the number one thing other than peeing
Yeah.
after sex. Like, get
Right.
out of a wet bathing suit. And honestly, it's an excuse to have like a really expansive collection of bathing suits.
Right.
Um, so I had been experiencing these health problems. That first UTI turned into a kidney infection, which is actually very common. If you do not treat a UTI very quickly with antibiotics, it can travel up into your kidneys. That kidney infection put me in the hospital. I had to go on two different rounds of antibiotics. Finally took care of the infection, and then lo and behold, within a few days of finishing antibiotics, I had a raging yeast infection.
Oh, wow.
Because when you take antibiotics, they are amazing at clearing up, you know, an infection that could be actually life-threatening if not treated. But what antibiotics also do is they wipe your body of all of the good bacteria that was helping maintain a healthy vaginal pH and like so many other things in your body. So it kills the infection and also all those helpful good bacteria, which, you know, I grew up in a household where I wasn't taking antibiotics all the time. And whenever I was, my mom was like, okay, you have to take your probiotics. You have to like have some yogurt, like have some, you know, fermented cultures to like readjust my body's bacteria system. And so of course I get a yeast infection. I use an over-the-counter, like a Monistat 7-day thing. It takes care of it, but it also, the ingredients in Monistat, while they will take care of about 96% of vaginal yeast infections, the ingredients in it are really drying. So essentially it sends you right back to, you know, a lubricant that, like a personal lubricant, which over for 50% of women prefer to have sex with some type of personal lubricant. And yet the most widely available and, you know, accessible, affordable will be your K-Wise, your Astroglide. Those are all glycerin based. And glycerin, it's like we're super familiar with it. It's in soaps and it's in tons of stuff. It's also a metabolic byproduct of sugar. So you have gone through this cycle. Now you're right back at the KY or Astroglide that probably got you here in the first place. That's disrupting
Right.
your your vaginal ecosystem. And it's also, it's like feeding any bacteria. So now, there's this cycle that people can get stuck in, particularly when they're going through major hormonal shifts in their lives. So for me, I was in puberty. My body was like flooded with hormones that were pretty new to me. A lot of people also go through this cycle like right, after they have a baby, or if they're perimenopausal, or if they're going through chemotherapy or some type of cancer treatment, or PCOS, endometriosis. So sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but the moral of the story is that I was in this cycle of recurring vaginal health issues, and I was seeing my older sister, in the same cycle as my mom. And I started thinking about proactive as opposed to reactive care. It's like I wear sunscreen so I don't get wrinkles and like don't get skin cancer. I like try and stay hydrated through the day, try and exercise, because I know it's a lot easier to like take care of a healthy body than to wait to like not take care of your body and then you get sick. And I was like, okay, these are all these ways I proactively care for my body. The vagina is one of the most absorbent parts of the human body. Why am I treating it like a trash can? And why do I have to like, and I started doing all this research, like in college, it was like proactive vaginal health. And I just couldn't find anything. I was like, how do I care for my body the same way I care for my face? Or, like, what do I do here? And I started to find a few ingredients that were helpful. The first products I started making were little tea tree suppositories. Tea tree is an essential oil that's antimicrobial, antibacterial. It's also really cooling, which means if you insert one of these little suppositories after sex, if you have any like post-coital inflammation, aka puffy taco, my favorite euphemism, it can be cooling. And then I started working in the cannabis industry in 2015 because the governor at the time passed some pretty monumental legislation that was going to take California's medical system and essentially turn it into a highly regulated industry that, was more in that would, I thought would really help combat the negative impacts on the war on drugs. And that was really important to me because my father had been incarcerated for nonviolent cannabis crimes when I was a kid. So I grew up I didn't know him at all, never met him. And I grew up, I was raised by a single mom, and I really carried a lot of shame around that. It's like, I didn't tell my friends my dad was in school. I grew up in an area where my mom was probably one of two single moms, like at our school. Yeah. I already felt so different than other kids. Right. And my mom was like a woo-woo alternative healer. And so I already was like, anything to just feel normal. Like I just, this nuclear families of like a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, a cat, and a dog, and like a nice SUV. I was already like, I don't feel like that. And so I didn't really tell anyone about it. And I carried a lot of shame about it. And then through working in the cannabis industry, I was like, wait, for the first time in my life, this isn't something I have to be ashamed of. In fact, it's sort of a badge of honor. It's something that gives me credibility in this space, especially when, there, particularly around 2015, 16, 17, there are a lot of sort of green rushers, particularly white people coming from finance or tech, seeing a big opportunity to make a ton of money in cannabis, which is hilarious because we're not there yet. And so it gave me a sense of pride and also a sense of purpose in why I was there. And then around that time, I started meeting manufacturers and growers. I encountered my first, another company that was making a cannabis infused MCT oil or coconut oil. And I tried it and I was like, holy shit, this is real. Because cannabis, when absorbed vaginally, it acts as a vasodilator. So it's going to increase blood flow to that area of your body, augmenting your natural lubrication, enhancing sensation, making it easier to climax. And I saw an opportunity to infuse the products I had been making with cannabis, because I think that I started to see that there were either vaginal health products or there were sex products. And for me, I don't really see an opportunity to split those into two. I think of it as intimate self-care. Sometimes these products, help lubricate or decrease friction in sensual situations, and sometimes they're used as proactive health supplements. So yeah, so I started, making my own little formulas and tinctures in my own house. I'm not particularly detail oriented. So I was like making all these batches with just whatever I had around, started giving it to friends. And after, maybe a year of just giving it to anyone who would take it and like a little mason jar, I'm like, put this on your vagina. It's going to feel great.
Yeah.
And people are like, what? And I'm like, just try it. And after a while, I started getting calls back from friends being like, so remember that oil you gave me? Like, can I get some more? And one of my best friends called me and she was like, you've been dealing with these health issues for like a decade now. And now you're in the weed industry. Like, you've always wanted to start your own business. What if this is sort of like God's way of showing, of like help, maybe all these health issues that you were experiencing were to show you that there's a path here to make something that will help other people too. So around that time, I realized I needed a business partner and someone who really had different skills than I do. I love to talk. I love sales. I love marketing. I am not a detail-oriented person. I really, like incremental process, like slowly moving the ball down the court. And my friend Rachel, who I had grown up with, we played soccer together in Golden Gate Park as kids, had just gotten back from, she's like an athlete. She's like a really serious athlete. I'm like a team player and I'm like very competitive and aggressive, but like have no athletic acumen. She's like an actual athlete. And she had just come back from traveling and we were literally at a friend's birthday party and she was talking about what she wanted next. And she was like, I really want to have ownership over what I'm doing. I'd love to create something like with my own hands, like with, take take an idea from the beginning to getting it into people's hands. And I just had this light bulb moment and I proposed to her. She's not my romantic partner, but I was like, will you do this with me? And she, I kind of can't believe she said yes. She doesn't even consume weed. Like she takes a CBD tincture, but this was pre-CBD tinctures. So we started just meeting up after work and on the weekends. We did it while working full-time jobs for probably about a year and a half. Mm-hmm. Launched a product in a few dispensaries. I was working in the industry, so I knew some people who had shops, was able to get, just use my Rolodex and be like, please just try this.
Right.
And then someone put us in touch with producers at Viceland TV. One of their shows, Slut Ever, was doing an episode about women in weed, using weed for sex. And they were like, yeah, we'd love to film a segment on you guys. And and we're just like, what? Like, we are so not ready for this. They come in and film it. It's so much more perfect. Like, we're just like, whoa, this is like a big kid production. And we're like, so when is this going to go out? Like, to how many people? And they're like, it'll come out in February 2018. And it'll go live to, between 5 and 10 million viewers worldwide. Mm-hmm. And that really put a fire under our ass to be like, okay, we gotta make as much product as humanly possible. And it also, I think, gave us sort of the validation that we needed to take that major leap of faith when you go like, okay, I'm going to quit my job and we're going to do this, which is the scariest thing for anyone who's starting, any entrepreneur to do. Like, that's a big leap of faith. So yeah, that's a little bit about.
That's so cool. That's such a cool story. I mean, like, and how everything happened organically, like it wasn't forced. I think that's when that's your path, is when it just kind of flows like that. And what's interesting also about CBD and how it works for you, for Quim and lady parts and so on and so forth. And I think it was just powerful what you were talking about as far as like how one drug, if you will lead to you having to take another drug, will lead to you having to take, as opposed to using something holistic and more healing that works naturally with your body. And that actually works in the same sense for the whole spread when it comes to pet CBD, when it comes to a healthy rest, when it comes to all of these medications out there are just really meant for you to stay on them, or it will lead you to more. Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's
It
like
is, it's
watching
like,
any advertisement, anytime they advertise a drug on TV and they're like, side effects may include
yeah.
constipation,
I'm like, did
death,
you hear that?
heartache, heartbreak, depression. And you're like, okay, so I'm going to take this, like, I'm going to take this prescription to help with my acid reflux, but then I'm going to need to go on like antidepressants,
Right.
like
I think people
laxatives.
just tune it out now. Like I'm like you, like they don't even listen to that part anymore. Because I'm because I am holistic. I don't take any. Like I had some back procedures. I don't take medication. Like just period. That's just not what I'm gonna do. So I'm sure if I'm in an extreme, like if I was ever pregnant or something like that, I may consider. But as far as I know, like it's unnecessary. So it was just powerful to hear that coming from you as well. Is this it's the same cycle, everywhere
Yeah.
with everybody. But so what made you pick you both, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
kind of brainstorm on Quim
Mm-hmm.
specifically. So what made you pick that name?
Yeah, so we originally were, when we first launched the company, it was called Quim Rock, which we liked the idea of having like a physical space that we were associated with. But at first, we wanted a vaginal euphemism. We wanted a word that meant vagina or something. So we looked at yoni. We looked at, we actually have this running Google document that has like 100 different euphemisms for vagina. And we were reading through it and we were like, a lot of them are really bad, like really gross, like roast beef curtains. And you're like, that is not a name for a beautiful product. And we saw this word Quim and we were like, that's a beautiful word. And we Googled it and it is, we started doing research and it is, it's Victorian slang. It's like 17th century British archaic slang for vagina or cunt. And it's actually still, like once every 2 months, we get an email from like an outraged, like British lady being like, I don't know if you know what this word means, but I implore you to change it. And it's actually one of my favorite emails to get because it's such a great opportunity to ask the question, like, what is so derogatory about being called this literal life-giving organ? It can expand, contract, it changes over time, it bleeds every month and doesn't die. Like it is so amazingly life-giving and resilient. Whereas like, when people say like, oh, sack up or grow some balls, I'm just like, have you
Mm-hmm.
ever interacted with testicles? Like they're super sensitive. Like they're not anywhere as tough. Some people should be like, grow a vagina, man. Like toughen up.
Right.
Which also like
That
all
takes
that
pounding.
gendered. Yeah, I think all that sort of gendered language is actually like not even that helpful. But we really were excited about the opportunity of creating a line of products, and taking back this word that has been used
Yeah.
pejoratively. And you're like, actually, no, that's not an insult. That's not offensive to me. In
Right.
fact, I'm very proud of it. So that's why we chose it. And I'm happy with it.
Yeah, it's a great. I had to look it up myself. I'd never heard of it before, but I thought that's so creative and it does flow so well off your tongue. It's kind of
Yes.
like my Quim. I'm gonna start using that.
Yeah,
Like
it's fun. It's
that's
a
what
very
it is.
elegant sounding word to me. I also love
Yeah,
just the letter Q feels like such a feminine letter. It's like so curvaceous and has this like,
it is.
it's like a little tail or like a dancing like hula arm. And there's, I don't know, I love the way it feels like a very round, it's like there's no hard edges in it. It feels not soft, but like to me, what I think of like feminine versus masculine, there's this like feminine feel to the word and the way it looks. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm really happy about it.
Absolutely cool. Oh, why did you guys drop rock? I didn't
Yeah, we
catch that.
dropped the rock because I think we realized it wasn't really necessary. Could stand alone on its own, and people always like, what? We always had to explain why Quim Rock. We're like, well, it's this place that's in our minds, and you're just like, you don't have to explain Quim. You can Google it, and you see what it is. And you're like, oh, that makes
Right.
sense. So I think for us, just simplifying, our
That,
goal is to become a global intimate wellness line, and the easier it is for people to interact with our products without us having to personally explain what it means, the better.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So what are women's biggest complaints when it comes to intimacy?
I think that's hard because I think it really depends on who you're talking to. Like I find that they're pretty like the complaints are often really generational. So if it's, you know, we're talking to someone who's younger, maybe in their 20s or early 30s, and maybe they have multiple partners or they're dating around. I think it can be, you know, one of the complaints we hear from them is that if you're not in like a long-term relationship, it can be really hard to, at what point do you start talking to your partner about what you like, you know, like that what works for you, or how do you figure
Right.
out what works for you so you can tell someone, because like no one's a mind reader. And right now I think sadly so many people are learning about sex by watching pornography, which like I have nothing against pornography, but I do think it can be harmful when, you know, pornography, it's like watching race car drivers. Like they're on a closed course, they're professionals, they are trained for this. And like, no, I would never want to learn to drive by watching NASCAR. And I
It's a
think
fantasy, not a
it's
reality.
a fantasy, it's a
Right.
performance. It's like you don't really see like a diversity of bodies. You hear a lot of like performative moaning. You don't really see
Right.
pubic hair or like pimples on your butt. Like you don't hear queefing, all
Right.
this stuff that like is super normal.
Real.
And I think it just it you know, I think particularly for younger people, when they start having sex, they're like, oh, it should look like this, or I should look like this. And I've talked to so women who are even hesitant to try certain positions because they're thinking about what their body looks like. And you're just like, who has ever given a flying F what someone looks like? Who cares? I mean, that's never crossed my mind when I'm engaging in sex. I'm never like, ew, you look really ugly right now. I'm trying to think about how I feel.
Right.
Um, and then I think that when you get, you know, when you get old, like to women who have recently had a baby, I think it's a lot more about like, okay, I've just like grown a human inside of me. I've maybe pushed it out of my vaginal canal. How do I sort of reconnect with my body as something that is mine? It's not just a vessel for this new human. And how do I like get
Yeah.
back into the saddle? And then I think for older women, it's like, okay, like I actually know a lot about myself. I know what I like in sex, but now I'm going through menopause and I have vaginal dryness issues, and having hormonal issues can make you way more susceptible to UTIs or yeast infections. So like my mom has recently gone, you know, she was like in the clear for a couple, you know, 2 decades. And now as she's going through menopause, like suddenly she's way more susceptible to UTIs again. So yeah, I think the complaints or concerns sort of vary on like where they're at in their life.
Okay, so what products do you all carry specifically that help women to fulfill their intimacy needs?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll talk about the CBD ones because that's, you know, as probably is more relevant to your listeners or viewers. So we have Happy Clam Everyday Oil, which I think of as a really great product for we literally call it eye cream for your vagina. So it has ingredients in it that are really helpful to reduce inflammation. So sometimes I use it after sex. It has a little bit of tea tree, a little bit of Dhammayana, a little bit of calendula, apricot kernel oil, which is really high in alpha lipoic acid, which can help heal sensitive skin faster. So we have a lot of new moms that are using it postpartum. And I think, you know, we have some people who use it as a lubricant. It is an oil base, so it's definitely not compatible with latex condoms. And I think I also use it like around my period if I'm just feeling sort of like tender, sore. And then we also have Smooth Operator Intimate Serum, which is an aloe vera based formula that is a CBD lube. And what I love about that is that as opposed to like your KYs or Astroglides that are glycerin based, this is aloe, like it's an aloe base, which whether or not you want to try Quim's products, that's up to you. I highly recommend trying an aloe based lube. They're not super expensive. They're naturally antimicrobial. They're also pH balancing. And when they absorb into your skin, they're really moisturizing. So they don't get that sort of like tacky feeling.
Yeah.
which can be just really gross. So yeah, Smooth Operator, it's aloe vera and CBD, or it's broad spectrum CBD, so it has other cannabinoids, and that's incredibly helpful for anyone who experiences pain with penetration, or vaginismus, vaginitis, which is essentially when your vagina sort of like subconsciously sort of clenches up. Think of it like a clam that doesn't want to open. PCOS, endometriosis, or if you're trying to get back in the saddle after having a baby, and are just in need of maybe something to help relax your pelvic floor, and just sort of relax all those smooth muscle tissue that can get sort of tight if you're carrying any tension or chronic health issues around that area.
That was actually going to be my next lead-in question, was it safe for pregnant women? Those two lubes.
So I mean, I would say talk to your doctor. They are vaginal topicals. So if you use them, let's say around the vagina, like the clitoris, the vulva, it's very unlikely that they will enter your bloodstream. If you use them internally in the vaginal canal, the likelihood is much higher that it might enter your bloodstream. The potency of these products are not crazy high. So but once again, okay. It's not ethical to test things on pregnant women. I know a lot of pregnant women who have used them. However, there are risks associated with that. I would say less on the medical side and more on that have to do with race and class. And if you got drug tested at a certain point, who would, a lot of states, if you have CBD in your bloodstream, right, they can take your child away. And it's a lot more likely that they will do that to, BIPOC people than white women. So I think it's just that, it's a risk reward assessment that I am not, sadly, I'm not really entitled to say whether or not you can use this. You have to talk to your doctor, you got to talk to your partner, and really have to make that decision for yourself. So far, there is not any glaring evidence that says it's unhealthy or not safe. I would, if you were considering between the THC and CBD formula while pregnant, I would definitely say just try the CBD one first. But right, once again, that's got to be it's a tough conversation, and one I'm not looking forward to when I'm pregnant.
Yeah. Talk to your doctor, talk to your partners, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and do your own research.
Possibly explore.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so do you have any advice for women who have lost hope in achieving intimacy at their level of satisfaction?
I would say, my advice is God willing, life is long. And so to give up on something like intimacy with yourself at any age, even if you have 2 more weeks of life left, I think it's worth pursuing that journey. I have a friend who works at a company called OMG Yes, and they essentially it's a membership platform, mostly for women, that has sort of instructional videos on how to masturbate for people who don't know how to do it. And they're not, they're not pornographic. They're really, they're very instructional. It's sort of like watching a YouTube video on how to set up, a Bluetooth speaker in your house. It's and then I do this motion for 30 seconds, and then I do this, and then I do that. And she always tells me about this story of this woman who was probably 70 years old and she got married when she was 19, had, I think it was 10 children, and had her first orgasm when she was 61 years old. And she's now oh yeah, I didn't get anything done for 10 years. It was great. She was I'm so glad. She was I just thought that wasn't possible for me. I thought I was never going to have an orgasm. I was, she was I just didn't think it was in the cards. Yeah. And if someone can discover that at 70 or 60, then you can keep, we can all keep working on it. And I think it has to be, it's not a destination. There isn't some nirvana of intimacy. It's something it's a journey that you're on, and there's going to be good days and bad days. And I still experience that when I'm, I've been UTI free for a year, and then I get a UTI, and then I sometimes spiral because I'm I thought I I thought I overcame this already. And then I have to remember that like, oh, well, maybe I was stressed. Maybe I was drinking more than normal. Maybe, you know, there's all these other factors. And I think just having some patience for yourself, like patience and grace, you know, just knowing that like, it's a long, hopefully you have a long time in this body and you kind of only get one. So you don't really want to give up on it, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Keep going. Don't give up.
Yeah. And there's hope for us all, and there'll be good days and bad days. And it might not get, you know, when I talk to women who have really, really intense endometriosis and they've been in physical therapy for years, and they maybe realize they had endometriosis in their early 20s and they haven't been able to have penetrative sex since then, or maybe ever. And talking to them about what, you know, they were like, well, I realized I wasn't going to be able to like use a dildo or have sex with an erect penis. So I learned other ways to get myself off. I like experienced the wonders of the clitoris and other types of, there's so many different ways to get ourselves off. And I think there is a kind of a pretty heteronormative old school angle that it's like penis, vagina, and that's it. And it's like, there's so much more than that. So that always really inspires me when talking to someone who has really chronic health issues, or, you know, or if someone's in a wheelchair, has limited mobility, and talking to people who have just not even overcome so much, but as just, I think they have had to realize that like the way that sex ed is taught to us, or the way our society wants to educate you about what sex should look like or what pleasure should look like, it doesn't apply to a lot of people. And I get really inspired when I see people like rewrite their own rules and being like, no, you know what? This is my body and I'm going to find a way to work that makes it work for me. And it might make other people uncomfortable, but like, that's their problem, not yours.
Exactly. Well put. Very well put. That's the last like strategic question that, you know, the ones that I put out. But one thing that I did want to touch on that you actually covered earlier was is based more around prison reform, because you know, you speaking about your father, it reminded me of my bout with you know, I was out of college at that point. Again, I'm approaching my 40s. So when I got out of college, I immediately experienced the recession, which left me without a lot of options, obviously. I think I was like waitressing at one point. I did do insurance at first, but I was waitressing. I worked at on cars at Valvoline. You know, I did whatever I had to do. But it wasn't a living wage, and it definitely wasn't what I expected to encounter after college. Yeah. Long story short, I was arrested for several pounds of marijuana. And I was arrested alongside of my white counterpart, and our lives turned out extremely different. You know, same crime, you would assume same time, but I suffered with that same felony on my record, paying you know, just all these fees and all this stuff for almost 10 years. Whereas, you know, she carried on, she was a business owner, she went on to have a child, you know, and all those different things. So definitely the war on drugs is a really important subject to me. Of course, you know, Black Lives Matter, but also just getting those nonviolent offenders out of prison is near and dear to my heart. It's one of the many things that's near and dear to my heart. What is something that, like an agenda that you all stand for, or that you would just want to kind of put out there so that people can associate you all with that subject matter? Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge that even with, you know, even though my dad was in prison for nonviolent cannabis crimes, it has been exponentially easier for me to start a business in cannabis as a white woman, to raise capital as a white woman, than it is for my counterparts who are women of color, particularly Black women, which is ironic and frustrating to me, because when you look at the most successful startups in America, you know, Black women are starting companies at rates that are
so much greater than any other group in America. And by and large, those entrepreneurial endeavors are profitable faster. They are more efficient. They make more money. And, you know, so all of this evidence is pointing to the fact that more capital and more, you know, support should be going to these founders. And I think a lot of the work that needs to be done, you know, we obviously, you know, donate to campaigns. You know, instead of running a sales promotion, we will, you know, donate 20% of sales to Justice for Breonna Taylor. I think also, you know, we've worked a fair amount with the Last Prisoner Project, which is an organization that, you know, their goal is to get people out of prison for any drug crimes, particularly nonviolent drug crimes. And I think that as long as there are people still locked up for nonviolent drug crimes, I don't care if it's cannabis or anything or any drug, like the war on drugs is still going on. And I think that there's also a lot of work that we as founders, Rachel and I as white women, need to reconcile with on our own time, on our own dime, that is not for us to be like performing virtue signaling on Instagram. I think that that's a very bizarre thing that's happening right now. I would say, you know, for anyone who's watching this, you as a buyer of cannabis or CBD have a lot of power in this industry. And I think it's really important to look up who you're buying your plant medicine from, and buy it from women of color, or buy it from companies that are supporting anti-racist efforts in the cannabis industry, and realizing that cannabis was a plant medicine that was completely legal, and that we turned it into this like scary drug as a way to lock Black and brown people up in prison. And like, it wasn't about the drug, it was about the medicine makers, the growers, the people who were making it accessible to their communities, and a way to police those communities. So I would say, you know, buy, you know, if you do some research, you know, buy Frig, look into Cannaclusive. And I don't know if you're familiar with Mary Pryor, but like, amazing human who is one of the founders of Cannaclusive. They're doing amazing work. And, you know, Kimberly Dillon, former CMO of Pop and Barkley, just started her own CBD skincare line that is phenomenal. I was one of the early testers. And, you know, Dorian at Undefined Beauty, like there's so many Black women who are making phenomenal products, the women behind Gold. So, you know, do your research. And I think that the best way that you can support change is being conscious of how you spend money. So go spend money with them first. And then if you still want to try Quim, good for you, try it. But first, you know,
Quim is supporting the initiative. You guys are, like I said, you're standing for something great anyways, but also making sure that you use your white privilege and use your platform is just as important, because it takes everyone to make this happen. And I think that's also the difference between now and our initiatives before, when it comes to civil rights, when it comes to the war on drugs, that we have such an eclectic group of people who are willing to fight with us. So I appreciate that. I really do. And I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Nina. I think I know for me, it's been scary to share my story, because, you know, the second you put yourself out there, you like make yourself really vulnerable. And I just thank you for being willing to have me come on here and for sharing your story, because it adds such a deeper level of connection when we're all, I know I'm starved for like any human interaction. And so being able to like hop on a Zoom with a stranger and be willing to like talk about intimate health and wellness and the criminal justice system, and both of our experiences with like how that impacted our lives and families. It feels great to have a real conversation on a Zoom call.
Yeah, likewise, for sure. Thank you so much for your time. And like I said, we will make sure that we're getting this out there on our YouTube as well as our Instagram. So we just want to make sure that your message was detailed by one of the co-founders. You know, it's nothing like the horse's mouth. So
totally.
So we'll put those things out there, and we'll be in touch. This won't be our last for sure. So
Fabulous. Cool. Well, I hope you have an amazing day. Are you in Atlanta today?
I am.
Very cool. Hope you enjoy.
It's so cool. Like you guys it's what, 2:00 there or something like that?
2:30
to me still. I used to live in Redondo Beach. Like
nice.
I'm familiar with California too, but yeah, I actually miss it. I'm not gonna lie. Like Atlanta's cool, but the South, when you're in the cannabis industry, it can be daunting. So
yeah, well, it's a lot more illegal there. The West Coast is like a little bit cooler. I mean, we're cooler in a lot of ways, but yeah, it's a little safer to run these businesses on the West Coast. Well, stay safe. Be good to yourself. Be good to your team. And thanks so much for having me. This was really fun.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
You too. Stay cool out there.